Again, let me say good morning to everyone, and welcome to our press conference that will be focused on drought mitigation. We are starting promptly at near to 10, and we're going to move smoothly through. It's a very important press conference for us to communicate the government's agenda on this critical issue. And permit me firstly to introduce, and well, not introduce, we all know the members on the platform, but just to acknowledge and say good morning especially to my Chief Technical Director who is here, Mrs. Doreen Prendergast. I know that our Permanent Secretary wanted to be here, so we especially acknowledge her as well. Chairman Hill, Mr. Thompson, the Director of the Meteorological Service Branch, President Barnett, NWC, Mr. Thompson again, Audley this time, no relation to Evan. From the Rural Water Supply Limited, Mr. Clark, who I'm sure is on his way, and all of the members and friends of NWC, WRA, and the Rural Water Supply Limited. Of course, Ms. Dorette Campbell, who is stunning in blue, Senior Director from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, and I know that we have also Mr. Stewart, who is the Director of Engineering and Technical Services from the National Irrigation Commission. If I were to continue, 1 hour of the time would be taken up with the salutation. So let me say good morning to everyone. Now, I don't see prayer on the agenda, and I know that it might be odd, but permit me to take just 30 seconds to ask us to assume a posture of reverence. Almighty God, as we continue your work, we ask, Lord, for your guidance, protection, and for you to give us the wisdom and understanding to deliberate on these national issues. Lord, these issues of critical importance will require beyond human support. And we thank you, Lord, for allowing us and permitting us to be here together to do your work. And we ask for your continued guidance. All these and other mercies in your name. Amen. Amen. Now, water, water, water. Everywhere that myself and Senator Hill go, we are asked about water. My portfolio responsibility is water, housing, and infrastructure. But if I'm at a housing meeting, I'm asked about water. If I'm at an infrastructure meeting, I'm asked about water. It is a reflection of the importance of this issue to our country, particularly because Jamaica, as you know, has been undergoing the impact of climate change. When you couple that with our old and antiquated infrastructure, what you have is a situation that requires urgent attention. We are committed as a government and as all agencies of government to doing what is necessary to improve our water systems, to provide the necessary awareness and capacity building to ensure that the country is advancing water use efficiency, and to make sure that whatever we're doing is going to meet current and future needs. So this is a critical press conference, and our intention is to speak to the country consistently. So this is one of a number of engagements that we will have as a collaborative body to ensure that Jamaica is consistently made aware of the circumstances and what our plan is. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Evan Thompson, who many of us know affectionately as Ev. That's not true, don't call him Ev. But Evan is well known as our Director of Meteorological Services. And for those who are old enough to know Roy, is Roy? Roy Forrester. I remember when I was younger, when Roy Forrester came on and said to you, it's not going to rain. I didn't say it. You said it. But Evan Thompson, please welcome him.
Thank you very much, Minister. Let me also acknowledge the rest of the head table. First of all, of course, Minister Charles, Senator Hill, Mr. Barnett, and my younger brother, Mr. Thompson. And of course, all distinguished persons in the audience and the members of the media, a very good morning to all of you. Minister Charles started out by saying that everywhere he went, people asking him about water. Well, everywhere I go, people asking me about rain. Where is the rain? When we get in the rain? It won't fall today, that kind of thing. The questions just keep coming. So the reason I'm here at this point in the program today, in the briefing, is to really set the stage by letting you know what kind of rainfall activity we've already been experiencing. And so we look forward to what the forecast is for the next few months. And so what is the status of our country right now and what we're likely to see as we move forward. So I have some slides presented here. And we start, first of all, by taking a look. The rainfall pattern for Jamaica is characterized really by this bimodal pattern where you see two peaks and two troughs, basically. There is a major peak that occurs usually in about the month of October. That is what we call our primary rainy season. But then the secondary rainy season is the second peak, which occurs just about in the month of May. In between those, we have those troughs, one in the summer period, but the other one, which is the main dry period of the year, occurs from about starting about in November and continuing through to about April of every year. So we are currently in what is considered our primary dry season for the year. So it runs from December to April, the lowest point occurring usually in March. And it is important that as we enter the dry season, we look at our status, where we are with respect to what has happened before and what stage has been set, because what we hope for is to receive sufficient rainfall in the primary rainfall season of October to take us right through the dry season without too much trouble on the NWC and other sides, like Water Resources Authority and Rural Water. Everybody depends on the water, but the water that they depend on is the water that comes really from above. It's rainfall that gets into our aquifers, but also is in our runoff on the surface. So at the beginning of the current dry season, we are coming out of a situation of less than normal rainfall. As many as 10 of 13 parishes received less rain than was customary. So that's what that chart will show you. Only Hanover and St. James were wetter than normal over the past couple of months. And the graphic comparison shows that St. Anne, St. Mary, and to a lesser extent, Portland and the Kingston and St. Andrew area were of major concern. Because if you see the comparison, the larger chart is showing you what the October rainfall was. The smaller one shows us what is the usual pattern for our rainfall. So we can see that we do have a little bit of a discrepancy there, a disparity, because in the October rainfall of 2019, we see that there was a drier area to the north and going toward the east than we would have experienced under normal conditions. So we see that we started out with a bit of a deficit, 10 of 13 parishes experiencing less than normal rainfall. Moving to our next chart, we'll look really at how things have progressed since that October rainfall. Because in November and then going into December, we see the patterns here. Click again and we'll see what we see November, first of all, of 2019. And in the smaller picture, we see what is normal for November. And then in our next picture, we see the December rainfall and what is normal for December. So for November, first of all, it shows that we continue a basically drying trend. More of a drying trend, mainly for eastern parishes and some sectors of the west, where you see the browns and oranges toward the west, showing up more in the November picture than you would have seen in the usual November. Okay, and less of the greens also in the northeast, where, of course, we would normally have the excess of rainfall, the Portland, St. Mary areas. December experienced closer to normal conditions. So the comparison between the December rainfall of 2019 and what is usual for December looks a little bit closer to normal, or they look more similar. So we moved a little bit closer to normal conditions during the course of December, but normal doesn't make up for a deficit before. You would need above normal to make up for a deficit. You know that when you deal with your own cash flow. If you're only getting normal, it's not going to cover what you didn't have in the months before. So we look at the next one, which is what we're going to tell you now about the drought index, because we calculate our drought indices based on the rainfall patterns over a 2-month period, and we look at how that compares to what is normal. If it falls too far below the normal, we determine whether or not we are going into drought conditions. So it is not synonymous to say that we have dry season and drought. A dry season doesn't necessarily translate to drought, but it could if the figures are much less than what is normal. So with respect to drought, we recall that drought is calculated based on the accumulation of rainfall over the 2-month period, and it represents appreciably below normal rainfall during that period. Dryness would be classified as near normal. It could be abnormal, it could be moderate, and I'm progressively getting worse. So we start with near normal, abnormal, moderate, then we move to severe, then extreme, and then we have exceptional dryness. So that is the chart, the categorization of our dryness. As at the end of December, 2 parishes were categorized as experiencing drought conditions, St. Mary and Portland. However, another 5 parish sectors, including Kingston and St. Andrew, St. Thomas, St. Catherine, St. Anne, and St. James were also drier than normal. Not drought, but drier than normal. They had not reached a threshold that would characterize them as experiencing drought. However, as I mentioned before, 2 parishes, St. Mary and Portland, were experiencing drought by our classification. So data collection for January is currently in progress. That's why I'm representing December data. January has just ended, and we are now in the process of collecting we're collecting and analyzing the data before we're able to actually put it out as the January statistics. So we're still working on the December, but you and I know that January did not produce any excess of rainfall across the country. So it's unlikely that we'll see any reversal of what we have seen going into December. So the data collection is currently in progress. Rainfall amounts were again low throughout the month. But after looking at the drought indices, we would want to look at what the projection is. And on the left of that chart, of that slide, you will see the regional projection. On the right, we see the local projection. You would have heard coming out of the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum that operates out of Barbados, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology. They have already put out an outlook. And so you would have heard that in the media, indications that we are expecting not that much in terms of rainfall moving forward. With the above normal rainfall being our only hope for replenishment of our water sources, the regional forecast for the rest of the dry season is projecting that conditions will remain on the drier side of normal through to at least April. That takes us through the dry season. This is the view of the Caribbean Climate Outlook Forum. Local analysis also points to near normal drying trend for most of the country. So we are expecting near to normal conditions, but more with a bias towards dry conditions. And this is for most of the country. But St. Mary and St. Anne could experience moderate drying. So we are expecting in some areas it will be nearer to normal, but moderate drying is expected in the north central to northeastern parishes. This is kind of a deja vu signal for us, and it could spell further concern for the availability of rainfall in the corporate area. We will recall that in 2019 there was a deficit mainly in that sector of the island, the northeast and generally eastern parishes, but the northeast in particular, and the sections of the island that depend very heavily, or where the dependence is very heavy for the rainfall, feeding the corporate area, and where the majority of our population exists. So it is critical to maintain our conservation practices nationally as well as at the domestic level, bearing in mind this projection that we have at the moment. That basically is the news. I don't want to tell you good news or bad news. Depends on how you look at it. But that's the news for you. Thank you.
Evan, they didn't know whether to clap or not. It's like they like you, but they don't like the news. All right, so thank you, Mr. Thompson, for really communicating to us what the reality is of our circumstances here in Jamaica. And we have to understand that it is important for us to have the meteorological services here. Our approach is one that is based and crafted on the evidence that's before us. We don't want to be saying things that cannot be justified in a scientific way. And so we use now the information that we've been given, Mrs. Prendergast, to shape policy, shape programs, and allow for us to be proactive in trying to advance adaptation and advance the kind of partnerships that are required for us to treat with the drought circumstances. Now I'm going to move swiftly through my presentation, and then subsequent to that, Mr. Rupert Price, who I should acknowledge, Senior Director from the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, is here. He's at the end of our head table here. Mr. Price will bless us with a song. I'm sorry. No, he's going to be giving us his presentation from the Ministry of Local Government. We have to lighten the mood sometimes. All right, so let's move straight into slide one. Slide one speaks to the onset of this drought, which is expected to impact our water supply systems because of our dependence on rainfall. The vulnerability of our system is based on the fact that we are dependent on rainfall. The forecast of below normal rainfall and severe drying will affect the storage levels at the dams and catchment tanks. So this means that the NWC and others will have less distributive capacity. If we don't get enough, we won't have enough to give. Therefore, we don't want to, but in order to be able to maintain a particular standard, regulations are put in place. This means that persons will have less access to water at times based on the regulations, but importantly, the regulations allow the NWC to reduce also the loss of water from the distribution network due to leaks. And we should also acknowledge Alvaro, who is here from Maya, who NWC and Maya have a significant partnership, which we will hear about further. So the plan that we have to manage the drought is a multi-sectorial approach to sustainable drought management. And as you know, a drought does not only affect our domestic water supply, but also irrigation as well. And so we have developed, extracted from our water policy, a drought management committee, which is a subcommittee of the Integrated Water Resources Management Council. Now that has been created to manage in a proactive way the execution of this drought management plan. And the committee is made up, of course, of all of our main agencies, NWC, WRA, Rural Water Supply Limited, but also NEPA, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, RADA, ODPEM, and many other agencies, all that touch and concern in a relevant way the issues relating to our water resources. Now, just to break down very quickly the drought management plan. The plan is a sub-plan of the National Disaster Plan, which has been developed by ODPEM. who is also the chair of our Drought Management Committee. And the plan has similar steps to the disaster cycle, as you can see. Drought mitigation activities are those which are aimed at loss reduction by adjusting the vulnerable facilities in ways that will render them more drought resistant. So we also have drought alert activities that will be triggered by reports from the National Meteorological Services and the Water Resources Authority based on rainfall data and stream flow data. And we know that just last year, in late last year, I think it was, Peter, and welcome Peter Clark, myself and the WRA team were out there in St. Catherine observing some of the new equipment that was put in terms of gauging rainfall. The Drought Management Plan also has within its components drought response activities that are aimed at the rapid intervention for the prevention of loss of lives, protection of health, prevention of loss, of course, of livelihood and property. And further on, go back for me, one more. Also, you'll see drought rehabilitation and long-term activities which are aimed at getting us as a society at a level that will enable continuation of life and economic viability in the shortest possible time. Next slide, please. Now, we're looking at the short-term strategies, and our immediate response in urban areas includes, and the NWC has spoken about this several times, the procurement of trucks, even though we do not like trucking because it is costly and inefficient, but in the short term, within the context of our circumstances, we have to procure more trucks to assist in distributing water to the hardest hit areas. And this is at an advanced stage now. The operational procedures for paying truckers is also being revised to ensure efficiency and speed. We have met with truckers last year, not in relation to that drought, but in relation to what would be anticipated for 2020, and with the hope that we could advance a more proactive approach. There's still a lot more work to be done, but the water unit with Ms. Talia Gibson and others are working assiduously for us to design the best process possible. There will also be a set date for the submission of all invoices for payment from the municipal corporations, which will be processed within the month, and we know that that has been one of the issues that we've heard that has contributed to the delay. And during the drought period, the fee for sterilization is proposed to be waived, something which several truckers that we have interacted with and engaged has indicated as one of the obstacles to them doing more trucking. Next slide, please. So to continue the short-term strategies, we will be ramping up our efforts in ongoing activities such as the distribution of black water tanks to help citizens increase their storage capacity, and these are affordable and reliable. And we have been across the country doing this, NWC, Rural Water Supply Limited. One of the main challenges in water supply is also the age of our distribution system. We have old, antiquated pipelines. And so we will continue to upgrade the major pipeline infrastructure in the corporate area, and there is work that is continuing across the country, in particular on our, as President Barnett is very proud to speak of, our non-revenue water program. And for those who are not aware, that non-revenue program is targeting reducing our non-revenue water, which is the water that we lose. We've produced it, but from source to your home, a large percentage is lost, either through the leaks or from co-owners who decide to take from it without making the requisite payment to Mr. Barnett and Senator Hill. Next slide, please. Further short-term strategies specific to the Rural Water Supply Limited in rural areas So far, over 101,000 gallon storage tanks have been distributed to the hardest hit communities. And some of these tanks are placed in central areas to increase the capacity of storage for hundreds of residents. You know them as wayside tanks. We also have to acknowledge the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, my colleague and senior minister, Minister Desmond McKenzie, who also has his program, which I'll leave for Mr. Price after he sings to tell us about. Next slide, please. So, very importantly, 26 rural water system projects will be completed, and this will bring water to over 56,000 residents in rural Jamaica. 18 of these solutions will be completed by March, and the other 8 projected for June of this year. Now, we have on this slide, I'm not certain if you can see it clearly, but there's a list of projects that many of which I've had the opportunity myself to visit. Plattfield Water Supply System in St. Mary. The team recently went to Plattfield, and we met with several residents that are excited about the solutions being presented to them. A lot of work is being done there. Charlestown in Portland. We were just there recently with the members of Parliament. Tiki Tiki in Manchester. Pear Tree Grove in St. Mary. Portland Cottage in Clarendon. I was there yesterday. Plum in St. James. Johnny's Hill in Clarendon. And Golden Hill Tank and Pipeline in rural St. Andrew that we have visited as well. And this is not the complete list of projects that are being undertaken by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation through our agencies, but it gives you an idea that the government is committed to executing these very important projects. Furthermore, we have 20 catchment tanks that are to be fully renovated by March of this year. We know that 12 have been already rehabilitated and 8 are to be completed by end of March, I'm advised. And these tanks have the capacity of over 100,000 gallons, which can support a community of 300 people for 30 days once it is full. Also, we have targeted critical institutions such as hospitals and schools, and when appropriate, we intend to also visit some of these institutions to highlight the work that has been done in collaborating with them to increase their own storage capacity and efficiency in how they distribute water at their specific institution. For the schools, we have 38 schools so far that are to be fitted with rainwater harvesting systems by March of this year. 20 of these have already been completed. 18 are at an advanced stage. Those who are on social media and would have seen through our social media at NWC, mine at P. Charles Jr., MEGJC, where we have communicated a lot of the work that we've done from Enid Bennett to other schools across rural Jamaica. What's very important is that we have connected the need to ensure that the systems that we introduce are also fitted primarily with renewable technology. And so the systems utilize primarily solar technology for pumping and 20,000 gallon storage tanks. And that's very important because as our Prime Minister and the Minister of Economic Growth and Job Creation has mandated us to, as best as possible, introduce renewable and innovative techniques in all that we are doing to advance our efforts in water use efficiency. Now, we will be streamlining and collaborating on several activities. As you know, the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development is an important player in the provision of water through minor systems and trucking. And we had what I can only define as an excellent meeting with the Minister and his team a few weeks ago, leading into their press conference actually, where we discussed strengthening our collaboration and ensuring that the two ministries are working together in a cooperative way to advance getting water to communities, particularly those that are most vulnerable across our country. So this includes procuring similar water trucks as they will be doing to facilitate the efficient maintenance. And the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development and the Rural Water Supply Limited will work together to clean and rehabilitate water tanks in rural areas. And we will be moving to implement water use efficiency technologies and rainwater harvesting infrastructure also in infirmaries, as well as jointly determining priority areas for minor water system development. Now, very near and dear to my heart is the Water IQ initiative, an initiative which was developed last year by the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Mr. Lindsay and others who have contributed to the creation of this initiative that is targeting, firstly, our schools, our students, and our teachers, but intended to go across the country to be a public education and awareness campaign. Now, Ms. Bennett from the Rural Water Supply Limited and Mr. Lindsay from the ministry have been pivotal and critical in advancing this wiki initiative. But we also have with us a steering committee which involves the necessary partners. And so we have to also acknowledge our representatives from the Ministry of Education, Youth and Information, Mrs. Campbell, and all of the other members of the steering committee who are advancing the wiki initiative. We've been to several schools. What it does is we go into the schools and identify students who become water monitors. And these students are trained and they are supervised by a teacher that's defined as the water coordinator. And when the water monitors are trained, they become the standard bearers not only in the school, but we have found that they not only go around and ensure that there's water use efficiency of other students, but that at home, the reports from the parents, Mr. Barnett, are that the students are coming into the home and taking over anything that has to do with water. Mommy, turn off the tap. Daddy, flush the toilet properly. Mommy, this is leaking. Go and get something to fix it. So it's not just about the schools. It is about identifying ways of innovating and introducing these necessary adaptive techniques through the schools to the community across Jamaica. And I must tell you, Mr. Thompson and myself, who have been at all of these openings, we are so impressed with our students, with the level of excellence, energy, and how they inspire in their own development of even music and songs, creative ways of getting the awareness out more than we could even imagine. So you'll see some slides here. Will we get any music on this? No audio. But here you have some of our students from Lawrence Tavern Primary who actually, they put together their own anthem, their own song about water use efficiency. And we have students from across the rural Jamaica that we have interacted with who have come up with creative ways. Next slide, please. Now, the initiative itself speaks to a very simple mantra of wasting less and saving more. And as I said to you before, thank you. Not only are we training students, training coordinators as teachers as coordinators, but we have a partnership with private sector in Jamaica through companies like Instant Save, who are working together to provide Mr. Clark the necessary devices that are retrofitted in the schools to ensure that they have the taps that are necessary that can regulate the loss of water. And they have the required bowls and other things that reduce loss. Okay? So we are doing everything in terms of improving the infrastructure, improving the capacity, and the awareness of all of the community members. And we're going to get this program, which is near and dear to me, across Jamaica. And I hope that we can solicit your support in that regard. The program also works with the NWC to do audits. We had the opportunity to do a similar thing in the corporate area where we visited a school, and the NWC and team members went in and did what we call, in my own words, an audit of their water use. And so we were able to identify where they had leaks. And I must tell you, I didn't go there knowing what Mr. Barnett would offer. But I can at least give him that stripe, in that Mr. Barnett and his team members from NWC were very gracious in ensuring that they provided support, not just for the repair, but for the increase of storage capacity. So we went to a school that might have had 2,000 gallons and left them with a fixing their 2,000 and adding another 3. So we can give Mr. Barnett a round of applause for that one thing there. No, but seriously, this team that we have, we work together daily. NWC, WRA, Rural Water Supply Limited, and our private sector partners from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation's Water Unit to ensure that what we're doing is making sense. We want to make sure that the investment we're making, the money we're spending, is money that we can say to the country we're getting value for. So we are very focused on ensuring that we remember the mantra of sustainable development means we have to ensure children are involved. And so you see here where it looks like I am greeting a young lady. This young lady was much smarter than me. She could provide information to me about water use efficiency that I didn't know. And this is the excitement that we're creating through the Wiki initiative, where our children are going home and researching and learning about ways to introduce adaptive techniques for their community, their home, their school, their country. And we intend, Mrs. Prendergast and our permanent secretary who I know, and the Prime Minister who support this initiative, to ramp up our work in the Wiki initiative, particularly through Rural Water Supply Limited. So Ms. Bennett, as I said to you, get some good sneakers. We're going all over the country. And we're going to improve conservation awareness. All right, so that's it for me. I want to go to the next slide and just say to everyone, thank you. And I want to invite Mr. Rupert Price, who will bless us with song and then go into his presentation. Thank you.
Well, he just said he knew I can sing, but I know he's not asking me to sing. Honorable Pearnel Charles Jr., Minister without portfolio in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, Senator Auburn Hill, Chairman, National Water Commission, Mr. Mark Barnett, President, National Water Commission, Mr. Audley Thompson, Managing Director, Rural Water Supply Limited, Mr. Evan Thompson, Director of the Meteorological Service of Jamaica, the media, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I bring to you brief remarks on behalf of Honorable Desmond McKenzie, Minister of Local Government and Community Development. The Ministry of Local Government and Community Development is proud to be part of this critical effort to respond to the national need for water with innovative policies and programs. Our experiences over the last 2 decades show how sharply, for the last 2 years, clearly, the climatic pendulum has swung in the Caribbean region, and more specifically, in Jamaica. You will recall that in 2017, this country endured one of the wettest years in recent times, with over 180 milliliters of rain drenching the island. In fact, that year was the wettest since 2010 and the fourth wettest in terms of average rainfall in the preceding 21 years. One extreme has given way to the other, with drought now being the feature with which the government of Jamaica continues to contend. As part of the comprehensive approach by this administration to this reality, the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development in 2016 initiated a program of establishing water shops consistent of a collection of high-capacity water tanks supported by administrative offices to serve the needs of drought-affected communities across the island. We started with the pilot water shops in Pennant, Clarendon, for which ground was broken in November of that year. Thereafter, in Manchester, 2 water shops were established in Marley Hill and Belfield. 4 water shops were constructed in the parish of St. Elizabeth, and in Portland, 1 water shop is being established at Commodore, with another to be constructed this year. Together, these initiatives represent an investment of over 100 million and the provision of over 150,000 gallons of potable water every day to scores of communities in these affected areas. The ministry is also on a drive to assist the municipal corporation in their efforts to provide water to affected areas in their jurisdiction. In this regard, we are working to provide 2 water trucks in each corporation. Thank you. Even as these efforts continue and are being expanded, it is nonetheless quite clear that a special initiative reflecting joined-up government is needed to address our people's need for water in what is projected to be a dry year. In December of last year, Minister Charles joined us at the ministry at a special news conference where it was announced that Jamaica can expect a comprehensive response to the issues created by drought. Today's proceedings are the outcome of the hard work of our policymakers and the civil servants to deliver on that commitment. The Ministry of Local Government and Community Development is pleased to be part of the community that contributed to the creation of the Drought Management Plan. We look ready to play our part in its implementation to secure the health, industry, and prosperity of our citizens. Thank you very much.
All protocol observed. Ladies and gentlemen, it's again, I would say a great pleasure, but it's a difficult pleasure to be here with you, just because of the realities that we face going into a dry season. It is not a time to be despondent, which is why we're here this morning. It's a time to say, look, we have been given some gifts by the divine authority who the minister invoked at the beginning of this press conference, to use our senses, to use the resources that we have, use the resources that have been given to us and resources that we as individual Jamaicans possess to make sure we conserve, reuse when you can, and recycle when we must. Water is critical. It's unusual for the minister, or any minister that I know, to bring this together so early in a dry season. But it's because we at the National Water Commission, at the board level at which I serve, have been working very, very closely with the management and with the ministry. The permanent secretary, who isn't here this morning, Mr. Sewell, Minister Charles, and above all of us, the Prime Minister, who is the Minister for Water, to make sure that as a dry season comes, which is not the first time we're going to have a dry season, that we use the resources we have, whether it's trucking, which is expensive, and we don't like to do that, but we must, fixing tanks. And the President and I have been from St. Thomas to St. Elizabeth, climbing up on 500 feet tanks, making sure that we put them back into work, and to do something else. Every time we put back a tank in operating facility and fill it up with water, we put an NWC brand on it for two reasons. So people can know that NWC is providing water, and for another one, when there's no water in the tank, call us and say, you have this big brand out here and there's no water in it. So it's a reason to be proud, or is a reason to shame us. The President understands we at the board are not into shaming. So we must provide water. Tough for him, but is him take the job. So Mr. President, you and your team working with us at the NWC is to carry forward into operational activity what the minister has so patiently outlined with great detail. What I like is the granular stage that we're going. He has towns up there, Greenville, Longville, Low Pond, 600 people, 2,000 people, 1,000 people. We know where the people are and what the water needs are. And so we're making sure we engage you to say we're aware. There's sometimes, for God's sake, it's a big business. It's across the country. We're not going to get it right every time. But when we don't get it right, everybody's on social media. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. And the President knows, and Garth and the rest of the Vice Presidents. I'm onto them at 1 o'clock in the night, Sunday morning, Saturday night. I don't care which party he is at. Water is not there for our clients. We get water there. And so we are on all these platforms, and he has the staff of NWC working with him. This is to say we're committed to make it work. There are other things that we're doing. Those two big pipes that you see by ferry, that should have been in long ago, he gets no end of grief. He and the NWA. At the cabinet retreat this past weekend, a whole heap of pressure. Unfortunately, is not them importing the pipe, Is contractors doing this thing, but those are the two people we hold responsible. E.G. Hunter from NWA and Mark Barnett from NWC. But unless we hold people accountable, and we are held accountable, Prime Minister thinks we're not doing a job and form a new board. And we know who the Prime Minister is finally accountable to. The big ones. They're called voters. So we're making sure that as we've been given this responsibility to act as the ruling administration during this government, is to make sure we not only do what we're supposed to do, but to inform you. I was very pleased to hear what the head of the Met Service, a big name. We used to call it another name when I was a child. Met. Same one, the Met Office. The people who pronounce your weather in and out and hurricane and those things. The detail that is gone in to make sure you understand as a nation with us where the water is coming and how the rainfall system is changing. But also, I'm pleased to see here the representative from MEA in the country. MEA is that Israeli company that has been tasked with a $4 or $5 billion contract to put in new water pipes in our system. We have water pipes that are 100 years old, older, 60 years old. The moment you put a little pressure on them, them screw all over the place. We're putting new meters in to make sure, first of all, in my house, every drop of water I use, the president put in my first. If them run over, if them use the pipe to fill the pool and turn it off, him charge me every penny for it, because it is very accurate. So we're doing those things to make sure we have water, a distribution system that works. Mayor is working on that. We're looking at a 15 million gallon system coming in from the Ray Cobre, a combination between Vinci, Sagicor, again, Jamaican and foreign company coming together to put that in place. We hope that the work will start very soon because it's been going on for some time. And we have the other arrangements, bigger arrangements that I won't bore you on right now, that we're looking at right now. We're saying, help us conserve. Help us reuse, if you can, and help us recycle when you can. But it's all of us who are responsible. Yes, call us. No, don't go to Cliff Hughes first and cuss us. Call us first. But if you have to cuss us, cuss us. We're a democracy. We said that we will provide and we will respond. And by God, I can tell you, when I get those calls, I respond. And the NWC is there to respond, and we're making no joke or apologies about that. Work with us, and thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hill, our chairman of the National Water Commission. Permit me also to acknowledge Mr. Thompson, who is here from ODPEM. Another Thompson. Another Thompson. I see we share the same hairstyle. It's with the same barber we go to. But, so some important information has been relayed. And again, there are several persons who have been so integral to this process. We've been all over the country. We have been dragging Mr. Delano Williams and Ms. Bennett and everybody because we're committed to getting this done. We have to remind our residents and Jamaicans to waste less and save more. And I know sometimes when you say that, first thing come to mind is, why don't you provide water more? But we're at a stage now where we have to just recognize the need for all stakeholders to contribute positively to protecting our water resources. Recycle water where possible, check and fix leaks in your home, retrofit your homes with water-saving taps. On our part, we as a government have to ensure that we continue to improve the infrastructure. We have some work to do, but we are getting that work done. And we are improving our infrastructure, we are improving our maintenance systems, we are introducing systems now that will ensure greater sustainability. We're enhancing communication, Mr. Carr. As you see, we are here right now talking to you, and we're increasing capacity. So, Mr. Thompson was going to speak, but he has said to me he'd rather respond to questions. So I'll end it there, and thank you all for being so attentive, and invite the media to ask us a few questions.
Please just state your name and the media entity.
Right. Minister, the question is to you. Vashan Brown from TVJ. Now, late last year, you had said you will not allow the effects of last year's drought to be repeated this year. Are you still giving that assurance? And if so, what's different about our response this year versus last year? And finally, what are the long-term strategies to deal with this? I mean, we experience this every single year.
So I consider myself close to God, but I am not the Almighty. So I couldn't say that we won't have the effect. But what I can tell you, Vashan, is that we're doing everything we can to, in a proactive way, reach out to the stakeholders way before the impact becomes extreme. Last year, we took the time to formalize and establish the Integrated Water Resource Management Council, a council of several relevant agencies, pulled together for us to use our minds, our intelligence, our capacity and ability to find solutions. From that, we have the Drought Management Committee that has been working hard to see how best to execute this plan. We've been meeting with truckers. We have much more to do in terms of identifying why. What are the challenges that they've been having over the years? What are the specific things? Is it us? Is it them? Is it the municipal corporation? Is it all three? What can we do to just simply get the work done efficiently? I'd say that we have so far been successful in bringing the stakeholders together, setting up the framework and the parameters within which we are going to advance these programs and projects, and more importantly, putting in place the necessary infrastructure in an incremental way to support this objective of distributing water to our people consistently. It's a large investment, which is made even more extreme because of how over time we have developed practices in Jamaica. We have significant non-revenue water, which is leaks and breaches in our transmission lines. We're doing what we can to upgrade that infrastructure, and through the project with Maya, we have reduced in the corporate area loss of water in those pipelines from over 60% to under 40%. And we are expanding that program to Portmore and hopefully to all of the relevant spaces. It's going to take time. But in that time, we can't expect people to sit back and say, well, Minister, I know it's a lot of money. I know it's a lot of work, so I don't have to have any water. No. We realize that you still need water in your pipes. And so the NWC and Rural Water Supply Limited have a lot of programs, as I said, to increase storage capacity. And within our utility services, we're doing as good as we can now to make sure that we set up, provide the infrastructure and set up the schedules that where, if the drought comes and reduces the amount of water that we have in the normal utility system, where needed, we can be more efficiently responsive to the people. That said, we know that we still have to work on ferry pipeline, which should be finishing soon, and other major projects that are going to push a lot of water into our system. Next question, please.
Yes, sir. I'm Balfour Henry from the Observer. I just wondered, the last time I came to one of these press conferences, there was an announcement about people in certain areas, I think Hagley Park Road and so on, would get some benefit in terms of reduced payments for water. I wonder if you could give me an update. But in addition to that, sir, I would love if you could explain to us what is really happening in that area, because it's very confusing. Some people are saying that there's no water for months. Some people are saying there's no water for weeks. Some people not getting water for days. And, you know, some people say they have water. So I really don't understand what is going on in that area. Thank you.
Balfour, right? Balfour. Morning, everyone. I see you have gone operational, so we won't allow the minister to take that on. So just to answer your question as it relates to the concession as a result of what transpired last year, that process has started. What we have decided to do is not to have customers visit the office, because we would have known where those customers are, and so we are dealing with those on an individual basis, and those will be reflected on the customer's bill. So there's no need for any rush to a Marasca Road office at all. With respect to water within that area, so just to give you a quick update, and just to emphasize something that the minister said based on what Vashan asked. Last year we had an unusual anomaly in our distribution because we were beset by three things. We have a disruption at ferry. We had a long, prolonged dry season. We did not get any secondary rain during the May-June period as we would have been accustomed to. Plus, we have a consistent disruption along the major thoroughfares as it relates to our transmission mains. So I give you a little background, because it's always important to put it in context. The Constant Spring, which serves majority and command the greater pressure across the city, had a number of challenges during the road construction. It is important to also understand that when that facility and the transmission was constructed, there was no isolation along that network that you could do when a disruption occurred. In other words, if the pipe that was installed as segments, so I have valves are what we call in the industry inline valves at a certain point, I could simply lock a certain section, do the repair, keep the plant running. But each time my facility each time the distribution or the transmission had a challenge, I have to shut down the plant. Whenever time I shut the plant down, a large area is affected. It takes hours, in some instances days, before I'm going to actually recharge a distribution network. But once specifically down Audley Park Road, you would also recognize that a new transmission main was installed along Audley Park Road. That main is now in operation. And there has been improved service delivery within the entire Richmond, Maxfield, and all those areas leading off. Where we would have had some challenges on the western side because of some issues we had along the ferry line coming in, which we still have. The minister spoke about that, so we would not necessarily rehash that, except to say that based on what is happening now, there is an urgent meeting that is now in place to ensure that that line is put back in operation very shortly, where we can now move approximately 5.5 to 6 million gallons of water per day along the boulevard, in addition to what we will now move along Spanish Town Road. So if you're speaking about sections of the network served by the new installed and newly activated commissioned Audley Park Road transmission main, we are not having any prolonged disruption of service to any customers along that road. But if there are specifics, the lady sitting beside you is my VP of Operation East. You can just share with her the location. I will certainly check that out. But that's not what we are seeing in the network at all.
What about Walton Park Road and this area in West Central, St. Andrew, where people were complaining recently that they haven't gotten any water?
So that's exactly what I mentioned earlier. So you're talking about Waltham, which gets its water supply from the ferry system. So again, let me just explain, because it's always important to give you everything in context, because NWC is about transparency, full disclosure. We have no interest to deprive any consumer, any customer of water. I just want to make that clear. We have no interest whatsoever, because we're in the business of selling water to make money so that we can improve the system. It is foolhardy of us to be depriving customers from that service. What we have in that area is a limitation, because again, when the main pipe was disrupted, we laid a bypass, which was much smaller than what would have been required, and we are now serving that general area from two sides. We're taking water through Island Dairies, is it Island Dairies? Our dairy industries rather, through across the Sandy Gully into Penwood as one side, and we're also taking water along Mullines Road, going down Seaward, and also on Waltham on another side. So again, the limitations is that because we are using a smaller transmission main to make up for what would have been a normal pipeline, which was just about 18 inches, we are now using a 12-inch. I'm going to be short. You can only put so much water in a smaller pipe to compensate for the deficit. What we're saying, we're committed to have two things done. One, the new pipe that leads down Spanish Town Road, and you all know every so often we have to shut down to fix the whole pipe along Spanish Town Road, and also to connect and commission the new pipe that leads up the boulevard, which is a much larger pipe than even the 18 that was disrupted during the road construction. So we are expecting to see improvement I won't necessarily give you the date because my integrity is at stake, because I continue to give commitment, albeit that I believe in the good intention of trying to ensure that we have, you know, the best service to our customers. Customers want to know when. That's the first thing that a customer wants. When am I going to get back water? In consultation with our contractors and supervising engineers, and those are what the dates would have come from. But I recognize that the risk I have is that my whole integrity about giving dates has really gone down. But I'm still going to work to ensure that we get that pipeline up and running. Don't worry. I'm very much committed to that.
Any other question? No? If that's it, then ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.
My one answer could not be so good. No.
Well, let me just close off again by saying thank you to everyone, and I want to say a special thanks to the team that helped very swiftly to put this together, Danny and all the others from the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Let us remember that there is a lot to be done, but there's a lot that we are getting done. Rural water supply, 26 projects, 56,000 persons benefiting. Several across the country who we are working to ensure that your street is fitted with the necessary pipeline and transmission systems. We do know, however, that there are still some issues, Mrs. Prendergast, and so I just again asked President Barnett from NWC, because there needs to be the use of technology to assist in how you communicate with us and how we communicate with you. And I know that the NWC is working to upgrade the system that they have on their website so persons can go on and check and query as to why is there a lock-off, what's going on in my area, and also to provide information when you have a leak on your road or if you drive past and see a leak. You can't imagine the amount of persons who get to me daily through social media sending me pictures. Keep on doing it, because it is what's helping us to improve our system. Thank you again to everyone. Thank you.